Okay, so let's dive into what happened in Germany at that Christmas market.
Yeah, the attack in Magdeburg,
Tons of info coming in about it.
that's all happening so fast.
We've got reports from Sky News, The Guardian, even officials weighing in like the U.S. and Turkey, and
Even Elon Musk chimed in on this one.
oh wow, yeah. So
Really a lot to unpack here, especially with the story developing. But we got to try and figure out what we know, at least so far, what exactly happened, right? Who's this guy? And then the bigger picture, what does it mean for Germany and the world?
yeah, because this isn't just some isolated thing. This is, Christmas markets. That's everyone can relate to that, especially this time of year. And you hear details like a BMW plowing 400 meters through a crowd, and it's scary.
Yeah, that detail about how far that car went, that's chilling. To me, that says this wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. And we're talking a Christmas market packed with people, so the impact here is just devastating,
Yeah.
especially for the families of those who died.
Yeah, an adult and a toddler. It's just
And the 60-plus injured, so many critically.
yeah, heartbreaking.
Yeah.
The Guardian is saying at least 15 are critical, and hospitals are getting ready for a mass casualty situation. It's just awful.
It's horrible. Makes you think about security, right?
Yeah.
What was in place at this market? Could this have been stopped?
We should talk about that more later. But first, who is this guy?
Okay, so authorities say it's Talib A, 50 years old, a doctor, actually, from Saudi Arabia, came to Germany in 2006,
Okay.
got refugee status in 2016, and had been a practicing doctor in Bernburg.
So this is where it gets complicated, like really complicated. Some reports say he was an Islamist extremist, but then others are saying he was actually more aligned with the far-right AfD party in Germany. And then there's Deutsche Welle quoting him saying he's the most aggressive critic of Islam in history, and this is after he got asylum. How do we make sense of all that?
Right, it's a huge question. And honestly, it might be too early to just label him, like his views, maybe they weren't so black and white. Maybe he didn't fit neatly in one box, or, and this is worth thinking about, maybe he was playing up certain labels for a reason, a reason we don't get yet.
So you're saying this image, the most aggressive critic of Islam, could have been fake?
Possibly. I mean, we got to remember, actions speak louder than words. Regardless of what he said, what he did resulted in this horrific attack.
And that's what makes his statement about the German state persecuting refugees so disturbing. He got asylum, built a life, became a doctor. To then turn around and say that, it just doesn't add up.
No, it doesn't, and it makes us look deeper. What experience is he talking about specifically? Were there policies, incidents? This statement, whether it's true to his experience or just some way to justify what he did, we need to look into it.
This attack didn't come out of nowhere. It's part of this bigger situation in Germany, the struggles with integration, with the far right, with Islamist extremism. It's all connected.
Exactly. And we can't forget the elections coming up. This attack is already being used for political points. The AfD is using it to push their anti-immigration stuff.
Using a tragedy to get ahead. Classic.
Yeah.
We also have to think about the fallout internationally.
Yeah.
There's this claim from a Saudi source saying their government, they warned Germany about this guy beforehand. Said he'd posted extremist stuff online.
That's unusual. Very unusual. And if it's true, it raises a bunch of questions like, what did Saudi Arabia tell Germany? When? And did Germany even do anything with that information? If they didn't, why not? This could really mess up relations between those two countries.
This whole thing is like a tangled mess already.
Yeah.
We've got this complex guy, politics flying around, international implications, and just so many unanswered questions.
And we haven't even gotten to the bigger impact on society. This happening not long after that Berlin Christmas market attack in 2016 is going to make people question security at these events. How do you keep people safe but also keep public spaces open and free?
No easy answers there. We'll have to keep digging into this tragedy. But for now, we want you listening to just sit with this. Think about what stands out to you, what questions you have.
It's amazing how this has affected people everywhere. We have statements from the U.S. government, Turkey, sending condolences, offering support to Germany. It really shows how connected we all are when something like this happens. This vulnerability, public spaces is something we all share.
It's true. It's that vulnerability, especially around Christmas time. These markets, they're supposed to be happy places, festive for communities to come together. And then this happens. It just shatters that feeling of safety. It's a harsh reminder that even with the holidays, the bad stuff doesn't just go away.
Yeah, and it's even worse given the location. The Magdeburg Christmas market, it's famous for those cute wooden stalls, the smell of glühwein wine and gingerbread everywhere. It's just, to have that turn into chaos and fear, it's unsettling. It makes you question everything, our society, our sense of community, even the systems we have to keep us safe.
Definitely. But let's talk more about this Talibé. You mentioned he was a refugee, but he also became a doctor in Germany. Clearly not an unintelligent guy. What could push someone like that to do something so horrible?
That's the question, isn't it? He's hard to categorize. We always try to put people in boxes, right? Extremist, lone wolf, mentally unstable. But it's usually more complicated than that.
You mentioned before that maybe his views weren't so fixed, so black and white. Could it be that what he said about Germany persecuting refugees wasn't just an excuse, but a real complaint?
It's possible. We have to consider everything. Could he have experienced discrimination himself? Was there something in the refugee community that radicalized him? Or was it, like you said earlier, a way to get sympathy or to cause trouble?
That brings us back to the conflicting stuff about his politics. Was he an Islamist extremist, a far-right sympathizer, or something else altogether? Deutsche Welle even quotes him saying he's the most aggressive critic of Islam in history. It's confusing.
Yeah, it's perplexing, but we have to be careful. We can't just label him based on where he's from or his religion. We can't jump to conclusions. We need to understand what was unique about this guy, what motivated him.
Labeling can be dangerous, right? Especially when it's used to justify being unfair to whole groups of people.
Exactly. That's where responsible media comes in, and politicians too. We need accurate information, no sensationalism, and they can't exploit this for their own gain.
Which is already happening, unfortunately. The AfD, the far-right party in Germany, they're using this to push their anti-immigration agenda, saying we need stricter border control.
Predictable, but so harmful. It plays on people's fear and anxiety. It could divide people even more and make it harder to build a better future, a more inclusive one.
And this attack, the 2016 Berlin Christmas market attack too, it raises concerns about security, especially during the holidays, Christmas markets, sporting events, concerts. How do we keep these places safe without making them feel like prisons?
It's a tough balance. We don't want to live in fear all the time, always looking over our shoulder. We want to enjoy ourselves, but we also can't ignore the threats that are out there.
So what's the answer? More police, more cameras, metal detectors everywhere.
It's not just about physical stuff, barriers and guards. It's more complex than that. We need better intelligence, more community involvement, and a deeper understanding of why extremism happens in the first place.
So understanding people like Talibé, figuring out what mix of ideology, personal grievances, and psychology could lead someone to do something so horrific.
Exactly. We need to get past simple explanations and realize how complicated these issues are, and we need honest conversations, even if they're uncomfortable, to find common ground and make a society that can withstand these things.
You mentioned earlier how this could affect Germany and Saudi Arabia, especially with that claim that Saudi Arabia warned Germany about this guy. What kind of information would they have shared? How could that affect their relationship?
Well, if Saudi Arabia gave specific intel, like saying he had extremist views or that he could be violent, and Germany didn't act on it, that's a problem. It makes you question trust and accountability.
It also makes you question how effective intelligence sharing is, right?
Yeah.
How do we make sure that crucial information is shared, but also acted upon, but also without, stepping on national interests or personal freedom?
Yeah, that's complicated. Intelligence agencies, they often have to work with incomplete information, stuff that might not even be reliable. So figuring out what's credible, how serious the threat is, it's tough.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. And in this case, the stakes are incredibly high. It's crazy going through all this, how different everyone's reactions are. You have world leaders offering condolences, support, but then you have, Elon Musk saying Scholz should resign. It's a huge contrast.
Yeah, it shows just how many different views there are about all this. You have people showing sympathy and solidarity, but then others, they just want to use this tragedy to get ahead, push their own agenda. It's kind of like a mini version of the world as a whole.
Yeah, and it really shows how important it is to think critically, especially now. We're just bombarded with information constantly. We got to be careful about what we read and hear, separate facts from opinion, and not jump to conclusions. Right?
It's about nuance. We can be horrified by what happened, but also understand it's complicated. We can't let fear and anger control us.
For sure. This isn't the time for easy answers or blaming people. It's time to really think, be empathetic, and try to find solutions that get at the root of this kind of violence. But we got to do it without sacrificing tolerance and respect for people.
And we can't forget, this attack, as awful as it is, it's not the whole picture. There are tons of people and groups out there working hard to promote understanding, to bring communities together, to make the world more peaceful and just...
Yeah, that's true. It's easy to focus on the bad stuff, but there's good too. Look at how people are helping the victims, donating blood, offering places to stay, even just saying they care. It shows that even with all this tragedy, people are still good.
That compassion, that resilience, it's so important. It reminds us that we're not alone in this. And it gives us the energy to keep fighting for a better future, a future where these kinds of attacks are rare, not the norm.
A future worth fighting for. Which brings us back to that last question, that lingering one. Der Spiegel mentioned that Talibé, even though he was a refugee himself, sympathized with the AfD, the far-right party in Germany. That's strange. How can someone who needed refuge turn against others who need the same?
That really gets at the heart of what it means to be human, identity, belonging, and how we can feel empathy but also resentment. It's a tough question, no easy answers, but it's something we all got to think about, both as individuals and as a global community.
And while we try to understand all this, we got to remember that this attack in Magdeburg, even though it was horrible, it's also a wake-up call. It reminds us that peace is fragile, that we need to be aware, and that making a more just and caring world takes constant effort.
It's a call to have tough conversations, to question our own biases, and to really try to understand not just what happened, but why. Because if we understand, then we can start building a future where these tragedies are a thing of the past.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Magdeburg Christmas market attack. We'll keep following the story as it develops, and we encourage you to keep talking about it, asking questions, trying to understand. Because in a world that feels so divided, knowledge and empathy are more important than ever.